this. Coming into the year, the NFL wanted, let's just think. We're thinking from the NFL's perspective at this point. What does the NFL want? They want big market teams playing in big spots. Those big market teams are New York teams, or the Boston teams, the New England Patriots. Teams that dominate the Midwest, like the Chicago Bears. The Green Bay Packers are a big one. Of course, Kansas City, it's its own market. And a West Coast team. The West Coast team is not the Rams or the Chargers. The West Coast team is the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, the team in South Florida, Miami Dolphins. They want these teams fighting for big-time positions late in the year. If not, all right, we can't have the big market teams. Who do we want instead? We want big stars. You want the Joe Burrows of the world to be somebody who is competing for playoff implications late in the year. They're not getting this. And on top of this, they're getting hurt. Viewership doesn't reflect that, but they're getting hurt with the quality of the matchups on Thanksgiving. All 3 games stunk except for the latter half of that Bear-Lion game, the first one of that. And the Christmas games stunk. And a lot of the Monday Night Football games have been terrible. Thursday night has had a decent year. A lot of the Sunday games, they're missing out because there's 10 teams that have 4 or less wins that are basically, shoo-ins, walkovers in a lot of these matchups. The NFL might, comparatively, this might be a bad year comparatively to what we've seen in the NFL standards of things.
Yes, it's tough because the teams that are good, they've been good. These Ravens aren't new. We're used to watching the freak athlete Lamar Jackson. We're used to seeing the freak athlete of Josh Allen. And obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. America is used to that. Football fan or not, America is used to the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes winning. You go to the NFC. Last year, the Lions were new. They're not new anymore. They're here. They're a little bit better, and now they're getting banged up, but they're not the new kids on the block anymore. The Eagles were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. That's not new at all. Who is new? I guess the Commanders. That's like the newest good team, and the one team I didn't mention, the Vikings. The Vikings don't excite me, and I can't explain why. Is it just Sam Darnold?
Oh,
is that the
my
only
guy.
thing?
I can definitely explain why.
Why?
The Minnesota Vikings are historically mediocre when it comes to big-time games. They're mediocre in the playoffs. They're mediocre in prime time. They can make it happen when you're not looking, and as soon as all eyes are on them, they instantly crumble. They are the only team, or actually, they are the only team since the late 90s to get to a 5-0 start and miss the playoffs multiple times. Now, they didn't have that happen this year, but they're one of only 2 teams that has gone to the Super Bowl and for at least 4 times and lost all 4 times, that being the Buffalo Bills is the other team. The Minnesota Vikings historically can't make things happen in big games, so there's no reason to trust them when they get back to a big game. That's why they don't excite you.
I do think there's a sense of truth to that, but that's also thinking in a broad scope historically. You're bringing up a lot of losses that they had back in the 80s, losing Super Bowls. Now, one thing I would argue that I would add to this is, let's call it like we see it. The Minnesota Vikings are not a big market team.
Yeah.
It's not a big market team. They're a historical team, but this is not an exciting market. Just because the Minnesota Timberwolves are good doesn't mean the rest of the world is going to resonate with what's going on with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Vikings. It's Minnesota. It's a pretty niche market. It's not like the Green Bay Packers where it's America's brand in a small city in Wisconsin. It doesn't have that. If you stuck that entire roster, coach down through the kicker of the Minnesota Vikings, and you put them on the Giants, it might be one of the biggest stories in sports. That's probably that's how the markets work. If you took that with the best, if not number 2, one of the best 2 receivers in the league, a great comeback story, a quarterback who's young and he's playing great. They have a great rising, star and a head coach. They have a good defense that fires on all cylinders, turns the ball over. They blitz teams. They've beaten they have big games. They have a great home field. You stick that in MetLife, they're getting in national television every single week. It's a small market. But to Christian's point, we've seen a lot of this. The Pittsburgh Steelers are good, but I don't think I think everybody's on the same page that they're not that good. They're good. They're not that good. Same thing we've seen every year with them. And, people want stars. People want something new. People want change. But also people want big markets because big markets get cities buzzing. And get cities buzzing gets the media into it. And when the media is into it, then the fans are into it. I don't think the NFL necessarily has that on top of a great storyline to follow along this season. That hurts it.
Yeah, the middle class of the NFL is really bad because we know, just hands down definitively, because of the results that we saw on Christmas Day, which were two upper middle class NFL teams getting dog walked by the elite of the NFL. We were reinstated about how much of a separation of power there is between the top 5 teams in the NFL and the rest. It doesn't feel like there's any chance from anyone knocking off what our presumed NFC Championship game could be. Maybe the Packers have something to say about that. Maybe the Vikings have something to say about that. But it certainly feels like Eagles-Lions, and it certainly feels like a combination of either the Bills, Ravens, Chiefs.
And I'm going to piggyback off of what CCAT's saying, because, Colin, you're talking more of the brand and the marketing side of the NFL, why it's been a bad season. I think it's just been the quality of play. These are sad games we're watching.
Oh, a lot of bad. There hasn't been a good Monday night game all year. That Saint Packer game was one of the worst games I've ever watched. Followed by that Thursday night game, which is, again, just god-awful. Terrible.
Now, it doesn't help that some of your bigger markets are those teams that are sucking right now, like the New York Jets and the Dallas Cowboys and the 49ers, and I could keep going on. Miami is finally starting to find a little bit of a group. But, like, it's been such bad football. And last year, we could accredit a little bit of it to injuries. This year, there haven't been as many big-time injuries. Dak Prescott was big. Tua for the beginning of the season. Yeah. Otherwise, like, the 49ers have had their whole roster kind of get injured. But I'm just talking like
quarterbacks,
big-time guys that are leading your franchise, not getting injured. Jets haven't been injured. Texans haven't been injured. I know they're going to be a playoff team, but still, it's still embarrassing to get only a safety up on Christmas Day. And I think that, especially the beginning of the season, the Chiefs were barely beating teams. The Ravens started off, 0-3 this season?
Yeah, 0-2.
And then they absolutely trounced on Buffalo. So there have been so many disgusting blowouts. The Lions putting up plus 50 points against 2 teams from the AFC South, that we don't get excited about those big-time games. And I'll also say, any game that we have gotten that's been good and close has been a 1 o'clock slate. There have been a lot of sneaky 1 o'clock games that not everyone has been able to put their eyes on, because all of our primetime games are getting filled up with complete blowouts.
Well, and also, when you have 10 teams that are effectively out of it, and 10 teams that have double-digit losses, that where do you put them? You have to schedule them with people. You have to schedule them in these games. Part of the reason why people get into the games is because there's a narrative attached to it, because there's implications attached to it. For the non-fan of the teams that are playing to get into the game, there has to be something that they're worth playing for. And when it's one of the 2 teams that necessarily have something to play for, and the other team is kind of just like rolling over and dying and waiting for the offseason, there's not a lot of intrigue there. There's not a lot of intrigue in the Chicago Bears, who are lifeless offensively, trying to put something together, and the team that has playoff implications kind of just escaping the game. That's not as intriguing and interesting, especially when there's 10 teams like the Chicago Bears in the NFL.
Yeah, you got to blame the Bears, blame the Jets. Those are the 2 teams that had a chance to be competent and to be exciting, new, fresh, interesting playoff teams, and they were out of it midway through the season. It's not even like they were the chase to make the playoffs and they fell short in the end. No. The Jets were 2-6. What about the Bears have lost 10 straight games? They never were in the playoff conversation, and it's their own damn faults.
Yeah, I'd add 4 more. San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yep.
Call it injuries if you want.
Yep.
Dallas. Call it injuries if you want. Another team that probably has big market implications. The team that won 12 games last year, not in the mix. Cleveland.
That's the one I was going to say.
Team that has a ton of talent, team that brought their quarterback back and thought be a small market team that could make some noise on the NFL side of things. And the last one I'd say is Cincinnati.
True.
Whether you think Cincinnati still might be in it or not, just because Kansas City lost on Christmas, I'm going to assume that Cincinnati is effectively eliminated. They need too much help to get into the postseason. You can't start slow every season and get away with it if you're Cincinnati and have a big star quarterback that people want to watch.